Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network. I'm your host, ScottyD, and welcome into the June edition of the South Pacific ITC Snapshot. Welcome in everyone in chat. It is great to have you joining us. And Pain Station Mini Holt, thank you so much for the raid and sharing your community with ours as we were kicking off the stream. Really appreciate that, my friend. So yeah, the ITC South Pacific Snapshots that we do here, we do them live here on Twitch, generally at the start of the month. This one's a bit later as, of course, if you didn't hear, my PC was out of commission for about 2.5 weeks towards the start of the month, which means we weren't able to do the snapshot then, but we're going to get to it now, and we'll do one in a couple of weeks' time as well. So, pretty much what we do in these snapshots is we look at the top South Pacific ITC ranked players, the factions that those players are ranking in, and what those top players are for each of those factions. We look at the events that have occurred, as well as looking at the top 3 players, how they scored, and what they were playing. And we also look at the events coming up for where you're able to get your ITC points in the South Pacific region, as we are about halfway through the season now, with 10th edition being released next week. It means that some of the last 9th edition events are going to be hitting the weekends, and that means we're going to be rocking into the 10th edition part of the competitive season, which is going to be a massive shake-up, not just for the competitive scene, but in the game in general, in the overall meta, in the overall way you play your games and things like that. It's really going to shake things up, so it's really going to be good to catch these snapshots to see how those changes are actually going to be impacting the competitive scene. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to jump straight on into it, I reckon. How is everyone doing, though? Great to have you all. I haven't actually had a look through it yet, Mini Holt. I need to have a look at it, but yeah, I'm pretty keen. I've heard some good stuff. So let's just get the show notes up for everyone. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So kicking off, to start off with for this South Pacific ITC Snapshot, we're looking at the top 10 ranked players. So currently in number 1 spot is Dylan Cowan. He's sitting on 985.83 points with 6 out of 6 events. But not too far behind him, not too far off his heels, is Mr. Alex Inglezos. Alex the Greek, as he's commonly known in the New South Wales scene, sitting on 934.99 points. But the important thing to note is he is only on 5 out of 6 events, meaning that he is able to get a good result in his next tournament. He could absolutely leapfrog Dylan and get easily over 1,000 points for the season so far. Really exciting to see Alex doing so well. In third place, we've got Josh Brody, who is sitting on 909.17 points with 6 out of 6 events. The other thing I will note is that Alex is the only player in the top 10 without all 6 events filled out. So he is the only one in a good position to leap forward to take that top spot, and then everyone else is vying for position and points as well. In fourth place, we've got James Mann out of South Australia, coming in at 904.49 points and 6 out of 6 events as well. Not too far behind Josh Brody, so the next event that Josh gets to, he's probably going to want to score as best as he possibly can to try and increase that lead over James, to give James not much of an opportunity to catch him with a decent result to replace one of his existing ones. We then have in New South Wales in 5th spot, Chris O'Neill coming in at 901.2 points with 6 out of 6 events. So the spots for 3, 4, and 5 are very hotly contested with less than 10 points between them. In 6th place, we've got the man of South Australia, Mr. Adam Napier, coming in at 891.48 points with 6 out of 6 events. So it's great to see Adam up there once again. He did just come off another Terracon win for a 3-peat, and we'll talk a bit about that later on in the Snapshot show. Then in 7th place, we've got Shane Miller coming in at 877.97 points, 7th spot with 6 out of 6 events. In 8th place from Victoria, we've got Stuart Trainer sitting on an even 828 points with 6 out of 6 events. He has been running Gene Stealer Colts religiously this season, and so it's great to see him in the top 8, but there's going to be some shakeups when we talk about the faction rankings as well. In 9th spot, we have got from South Australia as well, I believe, Mr. Ben Wan, coming in at 820.8 points with 6 out of 6 events played. And rounding out the top 10, we have got the man from New South Wales, Mr. Gary Morris, coming in 819.95 points with 6 out of 6 events, who has been on those Votan all season, doing really, really well. So there are your top 10 in the South Pacific ITC, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I can tell you, the states are now spread. You've got a couple of New South Welshmen, you've got a couple of South Australians, a couple of Victorians, and I think 1 or 2 Queenslanders potentially in there as well. No, I'm not seeing any Queenslanders. Mainly South Australians, New South Wales, and Victorians. So really, the WA guys, Queenslanders, you guys need to get in some big ITC events to get some scores in here to compete with these other states. Because I know New South Wales and South Australia have events on almost every week. I know New South Wales does. I know South Australia has them on every month or every couple of weeks, which is great to see there as well. So they're really on top of getting your points in and giving you those RTTs, those BT scores as well for those bigger events. Alrighty, so now we are going to jump into some of these faction rankings for you, and I hope you guys can read it on the screen. I'm not 100% certain, but let me know in chat. So first up, I will preface this. We used to do the top 25 players and what factions were in there. However, because of the amount of factions that there were, I decided to just keep it to the factions that the top 10 players have played so far this season, and looking at the top players in each of those. The way that the rankings are on Frontline Gaming's website is not necessarily as conducive as it used to be for looking at these rankings, so I might be providing some feedback to them based off that. So, starting off with the faction rankings, we've got Dark Angels coming in with Dylan Cowan in top spot with 655.87 points with 4 out of 4 events. Now, the difference here is that faction rankings only take your top 4 events compared to your overall rankings that take your top 6. The second faction is the Iron Hands, with Sam Marshall taking top spot currently with 497.25 points and 3 out of 4 events. Then yet another Marine faction being Salamanders, with one of the Wednesday night boys out of New South Wales, Ben Hayter, with 635.52 points and only 3 out of 4 events played. So the next event that he plays is going to automatically bump up his score for the Salamanders if he plays Salamanders, which means he's going to get even higher on those rankings, potentially up into the 750s, if not higher, depending on his placing. Next up, we've got Adeptus Mechanicus, and it is no surprise that is Mr. Alex Inglezos, 772.71 points with 4 out of 4 events on the AdMech. The guy is an AdMech master. He knows what he's doing with that faction, and so he is an absolute weapon with it, and it's really hard to defeat him on AdMech at the moment. We'll see how it goes into the new season, though. The next one is High Fleet Behemoth, and surprisingly enough, Alex Inglezos again has got top spot. However, he's only got 162.28 points with 1 out of 4 events played. So if you wanted to play High Fleet Behemoth and overtake him, go for it, ladies and gentlemen. It is a low-hanging fruit at this stage. Next up, we've got Chaos Demons, and Mr. Matt Morrisoli is currently sitting on top with 741.94 points and 4 out of 4 events. Next up, we've got Red Corsair Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, I should say, which is being helmed by Joshua Brody currently with 90.71 points with 1 out of 4 events played under this faction. Now, again, that is another faction that is a low-hanging fruit for everybody to potentially snag going into 10th edition, depending on the faction. Next up, we've got Ash Militarum, and your man from South Australia, Adam Napier, is currently leading that one at 618.95 points with 4 out of 4 events being played. We have then got Imperial Knights, and actually no, Eldari next. Sorry about that, chat. Kavrak, welcome in. Great to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. So Eldari, we've got Ben Ashton, I believe coming out of South Australia or Victoria, one of those two states, coming in with 262.44 points with 2 out of 4 events. So really good score for only 2 events, averaging 130 points per event. So this is a player that I'm going to keep my eye on, particularly for Eldari. Next up, we've got Imperial Knights, and that is James Marn out of South Australia coming in with a commanding 572.77 points and 4 out of 4 events as well. Then for Adeptus Custodes, Chris O'Neill from New South Wales has put a solid score of 619.1 points with 4 out of 4 events played very early in the season, with several wins back-to-back in the first month to 2 months of the ITC rankings to establish himself in top spot for Custodes, as well as being in the top 10 consistently. With next up being World Eaters, which is Aidan McCune, coming in 466.05 points with 4 out of 4 events played. I'm not 100% certain what state Aidan's from, though. That's another player I'm going to have to dig a little bit more into. Now, Gene Stealer Colts. We've got Stuart Trainer coming in at first place currently of 639.67 points with 4 out of 4 events played. However, it is important to note Eric Lathuris is not too far behind him, but I believe Eric's only got 1 or 2 scores. So Eric can really jump and overtake Stuart if he really wanted to. I dare say we're going to see that potentially happen when it comes to some of the events later on in the year, particularly with the TNA Open coming up in September. For Dracari, we've got another Queensland player, Sam Rubino, sitting on 302.92 points with 2 out of 4 events. Now, my 3 key does not like to work on my top of my keyboard, so that's why it's missing there. My number pad still works, though, so I just added that in. Then we've got Hive Fleet Leviathan. Our South Australia, Ben Wan, is coming in first place for that faction with 422.7 points with 3 out of 4 events played. So he's still able to get another event in with Leviathan and put in another great score, which I think Tyrannies are one of the factions that's going to do really well in this new edition, at least at the start. Next up, we have also got Tyrannies, which is also Ben Juan as well, with 579.77 points with 4 out of 4 events. So he's jumping his faction into different categories, depending on sub-faction or main faction there as well. Then we have got High Fleet Jormungandr, and this is one of the guys from, I believe, the NSCG Gaming Club that's out of Southern Victoria, and that's Darcy Geraldine, coming in with 120.2 points on High Fleet Jormungandr with 1 out of 4 events. Again, High Fleet Jormungandr, like some of those other factions, is a low-hanging fruit at the moment. So if you want to play that faction and get a faction ranking up there and say you're first place in a specific sub-faction, that could be one you want to do it in, much like what Darcy is potentially doing at the moment. And then we've got Leagues of Votan, of course, Mr. Gary Morris sitting on 667.89 points with 4 out of 4 events played. So that is all of the top factions that have come out from the top 10 players. It's really interesting to see that there's a decent mix of Chaos, of Xenos, of Space Marines, and other Imperium factions as well. It's not just all Xenos or all Chaos or all Space Marines or all Imperium. I think that's a really nice balance to be seeing in the top 10 players out of the factions that are being played as well. There's about 18, 19 factions sitting there. Next up, we do come to the tournaments that have been completed for the year to date so far. So the first one that we had is the Gladiator Gaming Doubles GT. This happened on May 6th and 7th with 36 players for the 2 days. The doubles that went first place was the best good, the bestest good, so 5 out of 0, so they won 5-0. With Dane Carlson running Orcs and James Webster running Tau Empire. In second place for the event was Frothy, which went 4-1, with Jack Rottenfeld with Orcs and James Clark with World Eaters. And then in third place was Wah, with 4 wins and 1 loss, with Joshua Wood running Orcs and Stephen Connors running Tyranids. Next up, we had one of the largest events for the Australian tournament calendar of the year, and potentially New Zealand as well. I will add that in there. 2 New Zealand teams were in attendance at the ANZ Teams Championships on the same weekend. This was up in Queensland for both events, these first 2, and it was an 80-player major with 10 teams in attendance of 8 players. And of course, in first place, we had the hosting state of Queensland. Now, not their mercenary team, their main team, with 5 wins and no losses. And the team consisted of Alex Terrison on Orcs, Eric Lathuris on Genestealer Colts, Hayden Walduck on Tau Empire, Josh McGowan on Adeptus Astartes, Nick Argent on Chaos Knights, Rory Argent on Chaos Demons, Simon Gojkovic on Asayani, and Will Milton on Leagues of Votan. Then in second place, seems to constantly be the bridesmaids at the moment, Victoria. These guys went 3 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. They had Abaddon Calmaleri on the team running Astramel Tarum, Augustus Hebel-White running Chaos Demons, Dean Simbeck running Chaos Space Marines, Dylan Cowan running Iron Hands, Jeremy Martino playing Adeptus Sororitas, Lawrence Gutierrez on Imperial Knights, Reese Cunningham on Orcs, and Stuart Traynor on Genestealer Colts. And then coming in third place on the podium is New South Wales. They haven't done this a long time, and it's good to see them up there. They went 3 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss, with Ben Way running Astramel Tarum, Brody Middleton running Eldari, Chris O'Neill running World Eaters, Chris Wright running Space Wolves, Josh McMillan on Orcs, Josh Brody on Chaos Demons, Michael Duke on Genestealer Colts, and Richard Hill on Tau Empire. So as you can see, some of these top factions are in attendance. Some of these top players are taking some of those top factions, with Ashmel Tarum in there, Genestealer Colts in all 3 teams, Demons in there, Tau Empire in there. So there's a lot of some really strong factions in every team, which could potentially lean into why they were doing so well. But when you look across these 3 teams, the majority of Team Australia for the WTC is in these 3 teams as well. Next up, we have got the first singles tournament that we're going to be talking about, and that is the Talara Takedown. The network's own Jack Lavicum came first place in this one. It happened on May 13th and was an 18-player RTT. Jack was running Deathwatch, and I've talked to him about his list, and it is something to behold. It is all firstborn Deathwatch, which is awesome. He went 91, 84, and 100-point wins. In second place, you had Simon Turner with Blood Axe Orcs putting up a 93, a 74, and a 100-point win, meaning that there was only about 8 points between first and second. And then in third place, Peter O'Neill running Chaos Demons, putting up a 96 and 81-point win with a 73-point loss. Next up, we have got the Risky Rollers teams tournament that happened on the May 20th and 21st. It was the 32-player GT event with 8 teams of 4 players. In first place, we had the team of Handsome Vic. These guys went 4 wins and a draw. They had Adam Camilleri running Fallen, Dylan Coward running Space Marine, Salamander Space Marines, Jeremy Martino running Leagues of Votan, and Reese Cunningham running Tau Empire. And then we had team in second place was Stu and Triple Chonk, who went 4 wins and 1 draw as well. It was Augustus Hebel-White on World Eaters, Hugh Titchener on Goth Orcs, Michael Hamilton on Iron Hands, and Stuart Traynor on Genestealer Colts. And then in third place, we had Last Minute Finaglers with 3 wins and 2 losses, being Alex Franz on Astramel Tarum, Jordan Harry on Imperial Knights, Mike Rainbow on Grey Knights, and Owen Hewlett on Chaos Knights. All 3 Knights. 3 Knights in Astramel Tarum. That's a good team up. That's actually really cool to have Knights as 3 of the armies. Chaos, Imperial, Grey. I find that quite humorous. Hope you guys do as well, chat. Then we have the Down Under 40K Sydney RTT that happened on May 20th with 27 players in attendance. John McGregor came in first place with 1,000 Suns, putting up a 97, 100-point, and 96-point win. You then had Eugene Orlov with Adeptus Custodes putting up 100, a 99, and a 90-point win. And then Cooper Fitzgerald with Tau Empire putting up an 85, 96, and 87-point wins as well. Top 3 being fully undefeated, which is absolutely awesome to see at an RTT. Next up, we then have Game Center Narellan's May RTT on May 20th as well, that only had 6 players. We had Richard Hill coming in first place with 90, 100-point wins and a 56-point loss running Death Guard. We then had Dan Invernon running Chaos Demons with a 67-point loss to kick off the day, but catching back up and getting an 87 and 90 point wins, with Dan Moore in third place, running Harlequins with an 84 and an 88 point win and a 63 point loss as well. In the South Australian side of things, we've got the first of the South Australian 40K circuit events, which is the Acolyte A, happened on May 21st, and it was an 18-player RTT. You had Sam Young in first place, running Adeptus Sororitas, putting up a 91, an 86, and an 80-point win, followed by Sam Marshall, who is running Iron Hands with a 93 and 99-point wins and a 75-point draw, followed up in third place by Ben Reggett, who was running Astra Militarum, 91 and 86-point wins and an 84-point loss. Next up, for the South Australian side of things, we have the Neophyte Tournament. 12 players in this RTT as well. We had Peter Strickland in first place with Chaos Knights, running in with 82 81s and an 82-point win. Then in second place, we had Dan Clark with Necrons, putting up a 41 and 87 and 88-point wins. And then in third place, you had Marcus Butler with World Eaters, putting up a 96 and 72-point wins, followed by a 77-point loss. And then for the Acolyte B tournament that had 18 players in attendance, you had Michael Wood coming in first place with Corn Demons, putting up 96, 98, and 96 for his wins. Then Ben Wan, not too far behind, with High Fleet Leviathan, putting up 96, 78, and 89-point wins. And then Blake Johnson rounding out the top three on Imperial Knights with 93, 97, and a 95-point loss. That is a huge loss to go down in that fashion and still come in third place is pretty astounding, I will say so. Then we've got the Tabletop Con 40K tournament that happened on May 27th and 28th. It was a 24-player RTT, as the threshold for a GT is 28 players. In first place, we had Eric Lothurus on Tyranids, not Gene Stealer Cult, Tyranids, with 96, 2 100s, a 90, and a 92-point win. Then in second place, you had Alex Terrison on Orcs, who put up 100, 89, 98, and 86-point win with a 73-point loss. And then in third place, we've got Jacob O'Donnell running Necrons, putting up 100, 96, 94, and 97-point wins with a 31-point loss. Then after that, we've got the Good Games Maitland 40K RTT happening on the 27th of May as well, with a 17-player RTT happening with Carl Pearson coming in first place with Leagues of Votan with 96, 100, and 95-point wins. Jack Lavercombe running the Death Watch again, putting up 85, 98, and 100-point wins coming in second place. And then in third place is Nathan Saunders running Ultramarines, putting up a 97 and 100-point wins with an 80-point loss as well. Is still quite astounding to score 80 points and lose the game. So high-scoring games happening for sure. Then the next event we have got is the Down Under 40K ITC circuit. This was, I believe, was happening up in Madawi on May 27th and 28th. This was actually a GT, but it ended up being a 21-player RTT. In first place, you had Richard Hill with Death Guard, putting up 2 91s, a 97, a 90, with a 69-point draw. It was the Combat Company GT. In Hurstville was that one. Okay, Feud, thank you so much for letting us know in chat. Really appreciate that, my friend. In second place, you had Greg McGinty with Yunari, putting up a 65-point loss at the start of the day for the weekend, and then coming back and scoring 88 and 397-point wins back-to-back is huge to come back. And then in third place was Igor Kalinin with Necrons, putting up a 53, an 80, a 95, 94-point wins with an 85-point loss in round 4. Then we have got the Yabby Culture Collab that happened on May 28th. It was a 15-player RTT. In a first place in this one, we had Nathan Meach running Chaos Demons, putting up an 80-point, an 84, and an 85-point wins. You then had Adam Napier coming in second place on Drakari. Interesting. That's a bit of a throwback to when he played them, the first Terracon that we covered here on back when it was under ScottyD 49. He played Drakari to the win at that tournament. He put up a 73, an 84, and an 86-point win. And then Dion Georgianopoulos playing Orcs with an 82, 76, and an 81 point wins there as well. And Cult of Europe, thank you for the hydrate, my friend. I would agree. Feud. Good last shot with the Druk before they get a bit hit going into 10th. So the next one up is the War for Glory doubles tournament that happened on May 28th. It was a 30-player RTT. So in first place, you had Antimatter Meteor B team, who went 3-0. You had Brendan Catalano on World Eaters and James Mann on Eldari. You had Lost in the Mail going 3-0 as well, with Nate Mail playing Necrons and Sean Mail playing Cow Empire. And then you had Dawn Meta that went 2 wins and 1 loss with Aiden McCune on World Eaters and Ben Reggett on Ashmil Atarim. You then had this event's quite funny. Terracon lists are due tonight. So that was on the 4th of June. With a 14-player RTT also out in South Australia. You had Michael Wood coming in first place with Corn. Just Corn. Not sure if it was World Eaters or Corn Demons. It was just Corn. With 90 points, an 81 point, and an 85 point win. In second place, you had Jono Bishop running Space Wolves with an 82, an 87 point win, and a 71 point loss. And then Aiden McCune running World Eaters again, putting up a 72 point win and a 72 point loss, and a 79 point win in there as well. Then we come to Terracon that happened on the weekend just gone out at Naracoorte, South Australia. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there this year, but I'm hoping to be back there next year to cover the tournament, as I love the guys out at Terracon. They are one of the first big events that we covered on the network, and so I always love heading out to them and being able to provide stream coverage to their amazing event. They happened on the 10th, 11th June. They were a 112-player major tournament. 6 rounds. In first place, going for a 3-peat with Ash Miltar, Mr. Adam Napier, putting up an 2 89s, 2 81s, a 96, and a 99 point win. You then had Stuart Eric from Wish Trainer, was his name that he put in, which is quite funny. Bit of a shot there to Eric, the master on Gene Stealer Colts, because Stuart was also playing Gene Stealer Colts, coming in second place, going 99, 83, 87, 86, and 76 point wins with an 85 point draw. And then you had Michael Hamilton, who is consistently one of the top players out of Ballarat in Victoria, doing so well, so consistently, and with the main guy at the helm when it comes to radicalism, strength in numbers, and RatCon tournaments that happen in Victoria out at Ballarat. He was running Iron Hands. He came in third place with a 94, 86, 98, 91, and 97 point wins with an 8 point loss for the top 3. So, ladies and gentlemen, out of those factions and the top players, we're seeing consistently a lot of top players in attendance. Guys like Adam Napier, Stuart Trainer, Michael Hamilton, Ben Wan. There's so many of these top players just so consistently performing at the moment. And it's great to see that they're deviating from factions a little bit. Feud as well. Feud, you did win 2 events as well, brother. So it's good to see you up there. And so it's great to see top players performing so well, so consistently, and the team events as well, particularly the ANZ Team Champs, is always a big highlight for every state over the course of the year. And it's generally why a lot of team events in the country are at the start of the year, so teams actually get a chance to practice the format, practice the terrain that will be at the Australian-New Zealand Team Championships. And again, it was also great to see 2 New Zealand teams come across to actually play at the event as well. It's awesome to see not just the Australian side of 40K, but also going into New Zealand and seeing what's going on over there, as well as I do cover the South Pacific side of things. Still, yeah, we're going to get to the events that are coming up for sure. So before we do so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everyone for joining us live. We do stream these live on Twitch if you are watching this on YouTube after the fact. So it's always great to have you join us on the Twitch channel, so make sure you follow down in the link below. Also, if you do enjoy the content we produce here on the Australia's Tabletop Wargame Network, feel free to check out our Ko-Fi page, where you can support us from as little as $1 Australian a month. And what that does is that actually supports the content that we create and allow us to cover more tournaments across the Southeast region, as I'm really excited to be able to expand the coverage as the networks gets bigger and bigger as time goes on as well. We do have some merch up there. We've still got some Australia's Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network objective markers up there for sale as well, and some ScottyD 49 dice there too. And if you just want to give a one-off donation, that is fine as well, but no pressure whatsoever to do so either, ladies and gentlemen. But just as a heads up, it is a better option. You are thinking, oh, do I maybe sub on Twitch, or do I just go to Ko-Fi? It's better to go to Ko-Fi, as Twitch currently does take 50% of any payments that you give to Twitch, and only 50% comes to us as the network. So bear that in mind if you're choosing to support us financially. But with that out of the way, we are going to jump into the tournaments that are coming up. And as Feud in chat has mentioned, we've got some absolutely doozies coming up. But first off, we've got the Game Center RTT that's got 20 players happening tomorrow out at Smeaton Range in New South Wales. I believe that's Game Center Narellan that will be there. We have then got the Battle Brothers GT that is happening this weekend as well, 17th and 18th of June, happening up in Bray Park in Queensland. Now, this is specifically a Team Australia WTC fundraiser tournament. They've got 44 players in attendance, which is awesome. I think they're aiming for 48. So 44, great effort there. Then we have got the Down Under 40K Sydney June RTT with the aim of having 30 players out at French's Forest in New South Wales on the 24th of June. And then we've got our first, well, maybe not the first, but one of the first for this season's ITC tournaments up in Darwin, the Crocodile Cup Darwin GT, with 36 players up in Grey, Northern Territory on June 24th. Then we have got the first 10th edition Teams tournament being Gladiator Gaming Teams Tournament. It's a major event. They've got 20 teams of 5 players out at Loganholme, Queensland on the 1st and 2nd of July. This is one of the first 10th edition tournaments in the country and the first teams event. So as Feud has said, it is going to be really interesting to see how the team's dynamic is literally 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks, actually. It's 1 week after 10th edition drops. And then back to New South Wales, we've got Exterminator 7 Major. They're aiming for, I think they've got 70 players. Exterminator sold out at Wagga Wagga in New South Wales on the 1st and 2nd of July. Now, this one will be streamed on the network. The man, Jack Lavikerma, is going to be on the mic, heading up the coverage down in Wagga Wagga. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Exterminator is such a great event with Dom as well. Oh, Dude coming in with some details in chat. Game Center Narellan and Down Under are both 10th as well. Interesting. Very interesting. Good to know. So Down Under 40K on the 24th is going to be 10th. And Exterminatus is 9th as well. But the rest is still, I think, pretty much after Exterminatus. I think maybe GTO, so Geelong Town Open, the next tournament, which is on the 1st and 2nd of July. It's a major event with 60 players in the North Shore of Victoria down in Geelong. I think they're running 9th as well as the last event. And then we get to a few others. So we've got 2 Game Center Narellan monthly RTTs within 2 weeks of each other, which is awesome. Both aiming for 20 players out at Smeaton Range in New South Wales. One's on the 1st of July. The other is on the 15th of July. I'm not sure if the first is going ahead or not, or maybe they've doubled up because of what's going on with 10th. I'm not 100% certain. That's just what's up on your ITC event details on the website for Frontline Gaming. We then come to Down Under 40K Sydney RTT on the 22nd of July. They're aiming for 30 players. 1st of June replaced the 17th one. Okay, so they've moved it forward instead of having it so far back. Good to know. Thanks, Feud. We have got 30 players in attendance for this one on the 22nd. of July in French's Forest, which is awesome to see so consistently out of the Sydney scene for the Down Under 40K events. Then the next big one, we have got the Steel City Showdown Teams Tournament. It is a major event. They're aiming for 20 teams of 5 players on the 22nd and 23rd of July. Now, I personally will be attendance at the Steel City Showdown behind the stream, providing the coverage of the games that are going on. I'm trying to line up a second commentator for the weekend as well, who has been on the mic with me before and has been absolutely awesome to have joining us to bring in some perspective from the New South Wales guys. But I also suspect we may see some interstate players, maybe some Canberrans travel up. We might see some Queenslanders travel down. Who knows? Particularly with WTC not too far around the corner, it would be a great opportunity to practice. Then on the 29th and 30th of July, we've got the North and South GT for a 66-player major down in Hobart, Tasmania. It is awesome to see a Tasmania event on the schedule as well once again, and really hoping that they do get up to that 66-player mark for the major. I think it's sold out quite possibly as well. Then on the 5th and 6th of August, we've got the Gladiator Gaming major in Loganholme, Queensland. I believe they've got to be aiming for 56 or more players being a major, but they haven't got that detailed out as of yet. And then another one close to home is the Capital Clash GT down here in Canberra. Once again, I will be there covering it on the network for you guys, providing the stream from the venue. It is at the Ainsley Football Club in Ainsley, ACT on the 5th and 6th of August. There is 70 players expected. Currently, I believe there's about 40 to 50 signed up. So if you are wanting tickets and you do want to come down to Canberra for a good tournament, Daz, how you doing? Great to see you, mate. Just talking about you, bud, and how well the Down Under 40K guys are going and their events and such. But yeah, no, 100%. If you guys want to come down to Canberra, it is the Ainsley Football Club is a great venue. I've seen it myself. Andrew and Dom are doing a great job prepping the terrain already. The community's coming together to assist as much as possible. The local stores are sponsoring. It's going to be a great event. $70 entry, and definitely recommend attending if you're able to on that weekend. But ladies and gentlemen, those are the events that you have got coming up towards the end of the coming into I think it's going to be the third quarter of the season, which is really going to close out how things are going. Now, it's really been great to have a look at how the faction rankings have been going and how everyone is doing on that side of things as well. And I think the more events that happen, particularly with 10th, I think we're going to start to see that there's going to be an event on every weekend. And it mightn't be every weekend in state, but across the country, there's going to be at least 2 events every weekend. 2 Down Under 40K RTTs this month are 10th edition. Nice. Dads, love to hear that. Love to hear that, mate. Yeah. So a lot of events at the moment are kind of teetering between 9th and 10th. So bear that in mind. Make sure you read the players packs. And also, if you know a TO that is running any events in the next couple of months, make sure, please, convey this message to them from me personally and the ATWN. Make sure to get your events up on Best Coast Pairings and get your ITC tickets to put into the app so you're able to get in the actual show and get a bit of promotion that we do here on the ATWN to talk about the events that are coming up, and maybe you'll get a couple more players at your event as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I thank everyone for joining us for the wreck everyone with Death Guard. By wreck, I mean make them feel happy by beating me massively. Yeah, Death Guard do seem to be in a little bit of a rough spot. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everyone for watching, whether you watched us live and joined us live. We're going to keep on going with the stream into Friday hobbying. For those just joining us on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit a like. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below about what event you're keen, or if there's any notable players that you keep an eye on, or I should keep an eye on as well, so that I'm able to be informed about them. Make sure to spread this around if you feel like doing so as well. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next snapshot.